I thought my husband was working late, then I found his second family living 20 minutes away. I never thought I'd be the one posting something like this. For years I've read other people's horror stories, offering sympathy and advice from behind my screen, secretly grateful it wasn't me. Well, universe, message received. Now I'm the cautionary tale. 3 weeks ago, my life imploded. I'm still trying to make sense of the wreckage. My husband James and I have been married for 12 years. We have 2 children, Emma, 9, and Noah, 6. We met in college, did the long-distance thing while I finished my master's degree, then settled in Portland. He works in software development, I'm a school counselor. We have had what I thought was a solid marriage. Not perfect, but whose is? We had date nights when we could get a sitter, talked about our days, planned family vacations, and generally functioned as a team. Sure, he worked long hours, but that's tech for you, right? His company had been through several rounds of layoffs, and he was constantly stressed about keeping his job. I supported him through all of it. 3 weeks ago, on a random Tuesday, I got a call from the school nurse. Noah had a fever of 102. I was in the middle of a student crisis, so I texted James asking if he could pick him up. No response. I called his office. His assistant, Jenny, whom I'd spoken to dozens of times before, sounded confused. James doesn't work here anymore, she said. He left the company about 8 months ago. I thought I'd misheard her. I'm sorry, what? He resigned last August. During the restructuring. My mind raced. 8 months? 8 months? James had been going to work every day for 8 months. Leaving at 7:30 a.m., coming home around 7 p.m., sometimes later. Complaining about his boss, sharing office gossip, even attending what he said was a company Christmas party. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Jenny hesitated. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but James asked us not to say anything if you called. He said he was taking time off for personal reasons and wanted to tell you himself. I mumbled something about having to go and hung up. I felt like I was floating outside my body. I arranged emergency coverage for my students, picked up Noah from school, dropped him at my mom's with some vague excuse, and drove home in a daze. I sat in our driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the house we'd bought together 7 years ago. The house where our children learned to walk. The house filled with photos of our smiling faces, our shared vacations, our entire life together. A life that suddenly felt like fiction. What does a person do when their reality shatters? I went inside and methodically began searching for answers. I'd never been the snooping type, we'd always respected each other's privacy, but that was before I learned my husband had been lying to me for nearly a year. Our finances were the first place I looked. We had separate accounts for our personal spending but a joint account for bills and savings. Looking at our joint account, everything seemed normal. His direct deposits had been coming in regularly. But when I checked our credit card statements, I noticed he'd opened a new card I knew nothing about. The monthly payments came from his personal account, but I couldn't access the statements. Next, I checked his laptop. Password protected, of course. I tried all our usual passwords, kids' birthdays, anniversary, his childhood street, nothing worked. His desk drawers revealed nothing unusual. I felt ridiculous, like I was play-acting some desperate housewife in a Lifetime movie. Then I found his old phone in the junk drawer. James had upgraded a few months back but kept the old one as a backup. It was dead, but I found a charger and waited the excruciating minutes for it to power on. No password. Jackpot. The texts were the first thing I checked. Nothing suspicious in his regular messages, but then I noticed an app I didn't recognize. It was a secure messaging platform, and inside was a conversation with someone saved simply as L. Thousands of messages going back years. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The most recent exchange was from that morning. L, will you be home for dinner tonight? James, should be there by 6. Meeting with realtor at 4. L, Lily has dance at 5. Can you pick her up? James, of course. Love you. L, love you too. I scrolled back through months of domestic exchanges. Discussions about bills, a roof repair, someone named Lily's school progress, weekend plans, grocery lists. It was like reading messages from a parallel universe where my husband had a completely different life. I kept scrolling, looking for the beginning, some explanation. Then I found a photo from Christmas, James with his arm around a pretty blonde woman, a little girl about 7 or 8 on his lap, all three wearing matching pajamas in front of a Christmas tree I'd never seen before. The caption read, Year 5 of our family tradition. Merry Christmas from our family to yours. 5 years. 5 years. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. Then I sat on the cold tile floor, phone clutched to my chest, and tried to breathe. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not to us. But it was. And there was more. I forced myself to keep reading. The address mentioned in several texts was in Beaverton, barely 20 minutes from our home. I pulled up property records online and there it was. James had purchased a house there 5 years ago. His name was on the deed alongside someone named Laurel Mitchell. Laurel. L. A Facebook search brought up her profile. Private, but her profile picture showed her with the same little girl from the Christmas photo. According to the limited information visible, she was a nurse at Providence Hospital. She was pretty in a natural way, shoulder-length blonde hair, bright smile, the kind of friendly face you'd trust immediately. I stared at her photo, trying to understand what she had that I didn't. Was she funnier? Smarter? Better in bed? Did she never get frustrated when James left his dirty socks on the floor or forgot to buy milk? Was their life perfect in all the ways ours wasn't? And the girl? Lily. Was she his daughter? The math worked. 5 years ago, I was pregnant with Noah. While I was growing our son inside me, was James starting another family across town? I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, I heard the garage door open. James was home. I'd completely lost track of time. It was just after 7 p.m., his normal arrival time from his non-existent job. I stood up, legs shaking, and walked downstairs. He came through the door with his laptop bag, smiling that same smile I'd seen thousands of times before. "Hey, babe. Where are the kids?" he asked casually, putting his bag down and loosening his tie. I just stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. "Are you okay?" He took a step toward me, concern crossing his features. I held up the phone, screen facing him. The Christmas photo. The transformation was instantaneous. All color drained from his face. His expression shifted from concern to panic to something else, resignation, maybe. He knew the game was up. "Kate, I can explain," he said, his voice hoarse. "Explain what, exactly? That you've been living a double life for 5 years?" My voice was unnaturally calm, which scared me more than if I'd been screaming. "That you have another house? Another family? That you haven't even had a job for 8 months?" He flinched at each accusation. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated for me, James." I was shaking now, rage building. "Tell me how my husband, the father of my children, has been lying to my face every single day. Tell me why our entire marriage is a fraud." "It's not a fraud," he said quickly. "What we have is real. I love you. I love our kids." I laughed, a horrible sound that didn't feel like it came from me. "And do you love Laurel too? And Lily? Is she yours?" He sat heavily on the couch, head in his hands. "Yes," he whispered. "Lily is my daughter." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. I'd known it, of course, but hearing him say it made it real in a way the evidence hadn't. "How could you do this? How?" I was screaming now, years of trust shattered in an instant. "I never meant for it to happen this way," he said, not looking at me. "Laurel and I met 6 years ago at a conference in Seattle. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. But then she got pregnant, and I couldn't just abandon her. But I couldn't lose you and the kids either. I tried to break it off dozens of times, but Lily, she knows me as her dad. I'm the only father she's ever known. So you decided the solution was to have 2 complete families? To lie to everyone? To betray every vow we ever made?" He looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I know it was wrong. But I didn't know how to choose. I love both of you. I love all my children." "Love?" I spat the word. "You don't know what love is. Love isn't lies. Love isn't betrayal. Love isn't dividing yourself between 2 unsuspecting families like some sort of timeshare property." The conversation deteriorated from there. He oscillated between desperate apologies and defensive justifications. Said he'd been protecting everyone. Said he'd felt trapped. Said he'd been planning to figure things out. Every word made me sicker. I demanded to know about the finances. He broke down completely then, confessing that he had indeed lost his job 8 months ago. He'd been using his severance package and draining his 401k to maintain both households, taking odd consulting jobs to supplement. He'd been meeting with a realtor to sell the other house because he was running out of money. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The look on his face was answer enough. I ordered him out of the house that night. He begged to stay, to explain more, to make things right somehow. But there was no making this right. I told him to go to his other family, his other house, his other life. I didn't want to see his face. After he left, I sat in our suddenly empty house, surrounded by photos of what I'd thought was our happy family, and tried to understand how I could have been so blind. How did I not know? Were there signs I missed? Red flags I ignored? In the days that followed, more details emerged. James had been maintaining this double life with military precision. He'd created elaborate systems to keep his two worlds separate, different credit cards, different friends, different schedules. He kept a change of clothes in his car. He had a second phone. He'd established careful patterns and alibis. When he traveled for work, sometimes he was with us, sometimes with them. Holidays were a complex negotiation, that's why he'd sometimes worked on Christmas Eve or Thanksgiving, so he could give each family part of the holiday. The thought of him shuttling between celebrations made me physically ill. The most crushing revelation was learning about the daughter he shared with Laurel. Lily was born just 3 months before our son Noah. While I was struggling through my first trimester with Noah, James was in a delivery room with another woman, watching his daughter come into the world. I've barely slept or eaten since that night. I've lost weight, lost time, lost my sense of what's real. The only thing keeping me functional is my children. They know something is wrong, they're not babies, but I've spared them the full truth for now. How do you tell your children their father has another family, that half their identity is built on a foundation of lies? My mom has been my rock through all of this. She's been staying with us, taking care of the kids when I can't pull myself together, listening to me oscillate between despair and white-hot rage. My closest friend Sarah comes by almost daily, bringing food we don't eat and sitting with me in silence when words fail. I've also had to navigate the legal and financial fallout. I consulted a divorce attorney, who was horrified but not entirely surprised by my situation. Apparently, double lives are more common than you'd think. I've frozen our joint accounts, documented everything, and begun the process of untangling our lives. The financial picture is grimmer than I initially realized. James has been burning through our savings for months. Our future, which I thought was secure, is now precarious at best. But the legal complexities pale in comparison to the emotional devastation. Every memory is now suspect. Our wedding day. The births of our children. Family vacations. Late-night conversations about our hopes and dreams. Was any of it real? Or was he always just playing a part, checking his watch, calculating when he needed to get to his other life? I've run the mental math 1,000 times. 5 years of deception. Over 1,800 days of lies. Countless moments when he chose to betray me rather than be honest, each one a separate wound. Edit, thank you for all the supportive comments and messages. I wasn't expecting this post to get so much attention. Writing everything out helped me process some of the shock, but I'm still struggling. A few people asked about Laurel, whether she knew about me and the kids. I didn't know at first, but I do now. Getting ahead of myself though. Update, it's been 5 days since my original post. So much has happened that I'm having trouble keeping track. I've been mostly functioning on autopilot, getting the kids to school, showing up at work, going through the motions of normalcy while everything around me crumbles. 2 days ago, I did something I never thought I would. I reached out to Laurel. I debated it endlessly. Part of me wanted to leave her in ignorance. Was it my responsibility to shatter her world the way mine had been shattered? Another part wanted to confront her, to see the face of the woman who had been sharing my husband. But mostly, I needed to know, was she a victim too, or had they been laughing at me together all these years? I found her work email through the hospital directory. Simple message, we need to talk about James. Kate, his wife. I included my number. She called within an hour. I stepped out of a meeting to answer, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear. Is this Kate? Her voice was tentative, higher than I'd imagined. Yes. I'm Laurel. She paused. I don't know what to say. Did you know about me? I asked, getting straight to the point, about our children? Silence stretched between us, then a soft sob. No. God, no. I just found out 2 days ago when he came home and confessed everything. I haven't been able to function. Lily keeps asking why Daddy is sleeping on the couch, why Mommy keeps crying. Relief and fresh pain washed over me simultaneously. She hadn't known. We were both victims of the same elaborate deception. Do you want to meet? She asked suddenly. In person, I mean. I have so many questions. I'm sure you do too. Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea. What could possibly come from two betrayed women meeting to compare notes on the man who'd ruined their lives? But something stronger than reason pushed me to say yes. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. Neutral territory. I arrived early, claiming a corner table where I could see the door. I'd Googled her photo enough times to recognize her instantly when she walked in, slender, blonde hair pulled back, eyes red-rimmed from crying. She spotted me and froze for a moment before approaching slowly. Up close, she looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a pallor that matched my own reflection. "Kate," she said, not quite a question. "Laurel." She sat down across from me, hands clutching her purse like a lifeline. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, both searching for what? Answers? Similarities? The key to what made James think he could build a life with both of us? "I didn't know," she said finally, her voice cracking. "Please believe that. I would never have. I'm not that person." "I believe you," I said, surprised to find it was true. Something in her devastation was too raw, too genuine to fake. We ordered coffee and began the surreal process of comparing timelines, filling in each other's blank spaces. James had met Laurel at a medical technology conference where his company was presenting. She was there representing her hospital. They had a brief affair, and when she discovered she was pregnant, he told her he was separated from his wife and finalizing a divorce. Over the next few months, he constructed an elaborate story about a bitter ex-wife, me, who used the children as weapons, about contentious custody arrangements that required careful handling. He even created fake custody schedules to explain his absences. "He told me your family lived in Seattle," she said, staring into her untouched coffee. "That's why he sometimes had to be away for days at a time. For his custody weekends." I laughed hollowly. He told me he was traveling for work. As we talked, a clearer picture emerged of the man we'd both loved. To maintain his dual lives, James had created entirely separate social circles. He'd told me his friends from work had all moved away or drifted apart after having kids. In reality, he was spending that social time with Laurel and a completely different group of friends who had no idea I existed. "Did you ever sense something was off?" I asked her, searching her face. "Any red flags?" She sighed deeply. Looking back, there were moments. Times when his stories didn't quite add up. How he was always so secretive about his phone. How he'd sometimes disappear for hours without a clear explanation. But he was so good at making excuses, and She looked down, ashamed. I wanted to believe him. "Me too," I whispered. We sat in silence for a moment, two women mourning the same illusion. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said hesitantly. "Were you and James? Were things good between you? Before all this, I mean." The question hit me like a punch to the stomach. Had I failed somehow? Had our marriage been so broken that he'd sought solace elsewhere? "I thought so," I said honestly. "We had normal ups and downs. The stress of kids, careers. But I never thought we were unhappy enough to. I never saw this coming." "Me neither." She wiped away a tear. "He seemed so devoted to Lily and me. Always talking about our future, making plans. We were saving for a bigger house." The mention of Lily changed something in the atmosphere between us. This wasn't just about two women betrayed by the same man. There were children involved, 3 innocent lives affected by their father's deception. "What have you told Lily?" I asked gently. Laurel's expression crumpled. "Nothing yet. She's only 7. How do I tell her that her father has another family? That everything she knows about her life is built on lies? I'm a psychiatric nurse, I should know how to handle this, but I can't. I can't find the words." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand impulsively. She looked up, surprised, then squeezed back. "I haven't told my kids the full truth either," I admitted. "They know something's wrong, but how do you explain this to a 6-year-old? To a 9-year-old? We spent the next hour talking about the practicalities of our shattered lives, the financial entanglements, the legal proceedings to come, the painful decisions about what to tell friends and family. But beneath the logistics ran a current of shared grief that transcended any jealousy or resentment I might have expected to feel. As we prepared to leave, Laurel hesitated, then asked, "What are you going to do?" "About James, I mean." "Divorce him," I said without hesitation. "There's no coming back from this. Not for me." She nodded slowly. "Me too. I've already asked him to move out, but he keeps trying to explain, like there's any explanation that could make this okay." We exchanged phone numbers, our real ones, not the ones James had used to contact us, and promised to keep each other informed about any new revelations. As strange as it was, I felt a connection to this woman, a bizarre sisterhood forged in betrayal. When I got home, I found James sitting on our front porch. My mom had taken the kids to a movie, so the house was empty. He looked up as I approached, eyes hopeful. "I've been calling you," he said, standing. "Where have you been?" I looked at him, this man I'd loved for so long, and felt nothing but cold fury. "I was with Laurel." All color drained from his face. "You met? You two talked?" "Yes, James. Your wives have compared notes." I pushed past him toward the door. He grabbed my arm. "Kate, please. Let me explain everything. I know I've hurt you, both of you, but this isn't what I wanted. It all just spiraled. I was trying to find a solution that wouldn't hurt anyone." I jerked my arm away. "Well, you failed spectacularly. You've hurt everyone. Your children most of all." "Our children," he corrected, his voice breaking. "I love them all. I love you." "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't you dare say you love me. Love doesn't do this." He followed me inside, continuing his desperate monologue of justifications and apologies. I'd heard it all before. The stress, the fear of losing either family, the way one lie led to another until he was trapped in an impossible situation. As if he'd been a passive participant in the destruction of our lives rather than its architect. I let him talk while I made tea, my back to him, my mind elsewhere. I was thinking about Laurel's face when she talked about Lily, about my own children who still didn't understand why Daddy wasn't home, about the years stretching before us all as we tried to rebuild from this wreckage. Finally, I turned to face him. "I want a divorce." "Kate." "No, James. There's no discussion. What you did isn't just a mistake or a bad decision. It was years of calculated deception. Thousands of individual choices to lie, to betray, to manipulate everyone who loved you. I don't know who you are anymore, and I don't want to." He slumped against the counter, all pretense of justification gone. "What about the kids?" "You should have thought about the kids before you created this situation," I said coldly. "But we'll work out visitation. They need a father, even if that father is you." "And what will you tell them? About why we're separating?" It was the question that had been haunting me. "I don't know yet. They're too young for the full truth. But I won't lie to protect you." He nodded slowly, resigned. "And Laurel? What will she?" "That's between you and her," I said, though I already knew from our conversation that her decision mirrored mine. "But if you're hoping for a chance there, I wouldn't count on it. She's just as destroyed as I am." He left soon after, shoulders hunched, defeated. I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Just emptiness, and the crushing weight of what came next. Update: it's been 2 weeks since everything fell apart. The initial shock has faded into something more persistent, a dull ache punctuated by moments of blinding rage or overwhelming grief. I'm functioning better now, establishing new routines for the kids and myself, going through the motions of normalcy while working with my lawyer to untangle the legal mess James created. The financial situation is worse than I initially thought. James's deception wasn't limited to his double life, he's been hiding our financial problems for over a year. Beyond draining his 401k to maintain 2 households after losing his job, he'd taken out a second mortgage on our house that I knew nothing about. We're essentially underwater, with more debt than assets. My attorney says it's financial infidelity on top of the actual infidelity, which somehow makes it worse. Not content to just betray my trust emotionally, he's jeopardized our children's security as well. Laurel and I have continued to talk, comparing notes and supporting each other through the chaos. It's the strangest friendship I've ever had, but there's something powerful in our shared experience. She's discovered similar financial deception. James had been using funds from the equity line on her house to help pay for our family vacations. The web of financial manipulation is so complex that both our attorneys are struggling to map it all out. The hardest part has been the children. After much consultation with a child psychologist, I finally told Emma and Noah a simplified version of the truth, that Daddy had another family with another little girl, that he had been keeping a big secret from all of us, and that's why he couldn't live with us anymore. Emma, at 9, understood enough to be devastated. She locked herself in her room for hours, refusing to speak to me or anyone. Noah, at 6, was confused more than anything, asking practical questions like whether this meant he had a sister and if they would all live together now. Laurel went through something similar with Lily. We've discussed whether the children should meet at some point, they are half-siblings, after all, but agreed that's a decision for down the road, when the initial trauma has had time to settle. James has been staying in a hotel, caught between his 2 collapsed lives. He calls the children daily, seeing them twice a week for awkward, supervised visits. He's been begging for another chance, insisting he can make amends, that he's gotten help, that he understands now how sick his behavior was. I've stopped engaging with his pleas. There's nothing left to say. What still haunts me, beyond the betrayal itself, is how I never suspected. I've replayed our entire relationship in my mind, searching for the moment where I should have known, where I missed some crucial clue. Did I not pay enough attention? Was I so wrapped up in the kids, in my work, that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me? My therapist, yes, I finally started therapy, says this kind of self-blame is common among betrayed partners. That people like James are expert manipulators who deliberately create an environment where their deception can thrive. That it's not my fault for trusting my husband. I want to believe her. Some days I can. Other days, the shame of being so thoroughly fooled is overwhelming. Last weekend, something unexpected happened. Laurel called, her voice tense. I found something you need to see, she said without preamble. Can you meet me? 2 hours later, we sat in her car outside a small apartment complex in Vancouver, just across the river from Portland. According to the record she'd found on James's laptop, he'd been making monthly payments to this address for the past 3 years. What do you think it is? I asked, staring at the nondescript building. A storage unit? Investment property? She shook her head grimly. Only one way to find out. We approached the manager's office together, a united front. Laurel had prepared a story about being James's wife, technically true, checking on the property while he was away on business, technically false. The manager, a bored-looking man in his 50s, barely glanced at us before digging through a filing cabinet. Apartment 307, he said, sliding a form across the desk. Lease is paid through the end of the month. You want to go up? Laurel nodded, maintaining her composure better than I could have. He handed her a master key, waving us toward the elevator with disinterest. On the 3rd floor, we hesitated outside apartment 307. What would we find? Another family? Evidence of some other betrayal we hadn't yet discovered? Ready? Laurel asked, key poised at the lock. I nodded, holding my breath. The apartment was small but nicely furnished, a one-bedroom with minimal decoration. No photos, no personal touches beyond a few generic landscapes on the walls. It looked like a corporate rental, clinical and impersonal. What is this place? I whispered, moving cautiously through the living room. Laurel opened a drawer in the entryway table, pulling out a stack of mail. It's all addressed to James Mitchell. Not James Davis. My husband's real name was James Davis. I stared at the unfamiliar surname on the envelopes. He created a whole new identity? We continued our search, moving from room to room like detectives at a crime scene. The kitchen was minimally stocked. The bathroom contained generic toiletries. The bedroom held the first real clue, a closet half full of men's clothes I'd never seen before, and beside them, women's clothing. Size 4. Neither Laurel nor I wore that size. There's someone else, Laurel said flatly, examining a silky blouse. A third woman. I sat heavily on the bed, the room spinning around me. How? When did he even have time? Laurel was opening drawers now, methodically searching for answers. Here, she said, holding up a small jewelry box. Inside was a pair of diamond earrings with a small card. Happy anniversary, my love. J. The date on the card was last month. While James was juggling 2 families, attending school functions and dinner parties and family celebrations, he'd somehow found time to maintain a third relationship serious enough to warrant anniversary gifts. Who is she? I asked, not really expecting an answer. Laurel had moved to the nightstand, pulling out a leather-bound journal. Maybe this will tell us. She opened it, scanning the pages, her expression shifting from determination to shock. Kate, she said slowly, this isn't a third woman. What? She handed me the journal. Inside, in handwriting I recognized as James's, were detailed notes, dates, times, conversations, even script-like dialogues with sections highlighted. As I flipped through the pages, I realized with growing horror what I was looking at. It was a playbook. A meticulous record of his lies, organized by person and situation. There were sections labeled Kate's family. Laurel's friends. Work alibi structure, with detailed notes on what he'd told to whom, which lies needed reinforcing, which questions to avoid. Some entries were chillingly specific. Kate's mother asked about Seattle conference. Told her it was rescheduled for June. Follow up with fake email confirmation. Laurel suspicious about phone call. Explained as work emergency. Need better system for late-night communications. Emma mentioned father-daughter dance to Laurel's neighbor at grocery store. Deflected by saying she confused dates. Avoid Safeway on Tuesdays. The apartment wasn't for another woman. It was command central for his double life, a neutral space where he could switch between identities, keep track of his elaborate deceptions, and store the evidence of his separate lives. The final pages were the most disturbing. Plans for the future, contingencies for various scenarios, including discovery. He'd mapped out exactly what to say to each of us if the truth ever came out, which emotional triggers to use, how to play on my insecurities or Laurel's fears to maintain control of the situation. My entire body went cold as I read his calculated strategy for manipulating us both through the inevitable fallout. This wasn't a man who'd made a terrible mistake and gotten trapped in a spiral of lies. This was someone who'd orchestrated every aspect of his deception with meticulous care, who'd planned for every contingency, who'd studied us like specimens to better predict and control our reactions. He's a psychopath, I whispered, unable to tear my eyes from the pages. Laurel sat beside me, her shoulder touching mine. No, she said quietly. Not clinically. This is something else. From a psychiatric perspective, this looks more like an extreme case of compartmentalization, possibly with narcissistic elements. He created separate realities and maintained them through elaborate systems. The journal was his way of keeping the worlds from colliding. Does that make it better? I asked bitterly. No. But it means he's not devoid of emotion or remorse. He's just broken in a fundamental way. Unable to integrate his separate selves. We photographed everything, taking the journal and several other documents as evidence before carefully relocking the apartment. Neither of us spoke on the elevator ride down or during the first few minutes in the car. Finally, Laurel broke the silence. What now? What now indeed? The discovery of the apartment and journal had shifted something fundamental in my understanding of what had happened. James hadn't simply made bad choices or succumbed to temptation. He'd engineered an entire alternative reality, multiple realities, with a level of calculation that seemed almost inhuman. We use it, I said finally. For the divorces. For custody arrangements. This proves he's not just a cheater, he's someone who cannot be trusted on any level. She nodded slowly. I feel like I never knew him at all. 5 years, and I was living with a stranger. 12 years for me, I said softly. My entire adult life. We parted with a hug that day, a real one, not the awkward embrace of our first meeting. Whatever strange bond had formed between us had been solidified by this final revelation. We were soldiers who'd survived the same battle, carrying scars only the other could truly understand. That night, after the kids were asleep, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back porch, staring at the stars. For the first time since the discovery, I felt something like peace. Not happiness, not even acceptance yet, but a quiet certainty that I would survive this. That my children would survive this. James had stolen years of my life through his deception. He'd taken my trust, my security, my belief in my own judgment. But sitting there under the vast night sky, I made a promise to myself, he wouldn't take my future too. The road ahead was long and would undoubtedly contain more pain. Legal battles, financial hardship, the ongoing challenge of helping my children process their father's betrayal without internalizing it as rejection. But I would walk that road on my terms, not his. I thought about the journal, about the cold calculation with which he'd mapped out our emotional responses. In his script, I was supposed to collapse under the weight of his betrayal. To beg for explanations, to grasp at any chance for reconciliation, to lose myself in trying to understand why he'd done what he'd done. But scripts can be rewritten. Stories can take unexpected turns, and this story, my story, wouldn't end with me as the devastated wife, forever defined by her husband's betrayal. This morning, I met with my lawyer to file the final divorce papers. I've secured a loan to keep the house for now, allowing the kids some stability amid the chaos. I've started applying for better paying positions that would give us more financial security. Small steps toward rebuilding. Laurel and I still talk almost daily. We're discussing arranging a careful, supervised meeting between the children sometime in the next few months. They should know they have siblings, even if the circumstances are painfully complex. As for James, he continues to follow his script, alternating between desperate pleas and calculated manipulation. But his power diminishes each day as Laurel and I strengthen our resolve and our self-reliance. I won't pretend I'm healed. Some nights I still wake up gasping from nightmares where I'm searching through an endless house for something I've lost. Some days the anger is so intense I can barely function. And there are moments when I miss the life I thought I had with a grief that feels bottomless. But more and more, I find myself looking forward rather than back. Imagining a life rebuilt on honesty and self-respect. A life where trust, when it comes again, will be stronger for having been broken and carefully restored. Am I naive for believing I can fully recover from this? Maybe. But I'd rather be naive than bitter. I'd rather believe in the possibility of joy, even after such profound betrayal, than surrender to permanent cynicism. If you've read this far, thank you for witnessing my story. For those of you in the comments who've shared similar experiences, I see you, and I'm sorry you understand this pain so intimately. For those offering advice and support, thank you. Each message reminds me I'm not alone in this journey. I don't know what the future holds. But for the first time in weeks, I'm not afraid to find out.